George, an 85-year-old retired schoolteacher, lived a quiet life filled with modesty and compassion. One chilly autumn morning, he stumbled upon a lost wallet, brimming with cash and cards. Despite his own financial struggles, George's unwavering morals led him to track down its owner, a wealthy man named Michael. George's act of kindness could have ended there, but it sparked a chain of events that transformed his life in unimaginable ways. What began as a simple gesture of honesty turned into a heartwarming story of community, gratitude, and the extraordinary ripple effect of selflessness. George's humility and integrity not only changed his life, but inspired everyone who heard his story, proving that even small actions can leave a lasting impact. It was a chilly autumn morning when George, an 85-year-old retired schoolteacher, shuffled his way down the cobblestone street of his small town. The leaves crunched under his worn shoes as he made his way to the park, a place he visited daily to sit on his favorite bench and watch the world go by. Life had been quiet and predictable for George, who lived alone after his wife passed away a decade ago. His days were simple, his needs modest, and his company limited to the occasional chat with neighbors or passers-by. On this particular day, as George approached the park, something caught his eye on the ground, a brown leather wallet slightly scuffed but clearly of high quality. He bent down with some effort and picked it up, brushing off the dirt. Opening it, he found it stuffed with cash, cards, and a few personal items, including a driver's license with the name Michael Grayson. George was taken aback by the sheer amount of money in the wallet. It was more than he had seen in years. For a fleeting moment, he wondered what it might be like to keep it. After all, his pension barely covered his bills, and the rising cost of living had been weighing heavily on him. But George quickly dismissed the thought. His moral compass, honed over decades of teaching right from wrong, wouldn't allow it. "This isn't mine," he muttered to himself. "It belongs to someone, and they're probably worried sick about it." With that, George resolved to find the wallet's owner. His first stop was the local police station, but upon arriving, he was told that they couldn't track down the owner immediately. They suggested he leave the wallet with them, but George hesitated. Something about this felt personal. He wanted to ensure the wallet got back to the right hands. The driver's license listed an address on the wealthier side of town, a neighborhood George rarely visited. He decided to take the bus there. The journey was long, and his legs ached, but George remained determined. As he arrived at the house, a grand modern structure with sleek glass walls and a meticulously manicured lawn, he felt out of place. Still, he mustered the courage to ring the doorbell. After a few moments, a young man in his early 30s opened the door, his face etched with worry. "Can I help you?" he asked cautiously. "Are you Michael Grayson?" George asked. "Yes, that's me," the man replied, his eyes narrowing slightly. George held up the wallet. "I found this near the park this morning. I believe it's yours." Michael's expression shifted from suspicion to disbelief. He grabbed the wallet and opened it, quickly scanning the contents. "Everything's here," he said, his voice thick with relief. "You have no idea how much this means to me. I was frantic when I realized I'd lost it." George smiled gently. "I'm glad I could return it to you. It's important to keep things that don't belong to us in the right hands." Michael looked at George, noticing the frayed edges of his coat and the weariness in his eyes. "Please, come inside. Let me at least offer you some tea or coffee as a thank you." George hesitated, but eventually agreed. Inside, the house was as luxurious as he had imagined: polished floors, high ceilings, and furniture that looked more like art than something you'd sit on. As they sat at the kitchen table, Michael poured George a cup of coffee and asked about his life. George shared bits and pieces: his years as a teacher, his late wife, and his quiet days in retirement. Michael listened intently, his gratitude deepening with every word. He couldn't believe that someone with so little had gone to such lengths to return his wallet. As they talked, An idea began to form in Michael's mind. When George finished his coffee and prepared to leave, Michael stopped him. "Wait," he said, reaching into the wallet. "I want to reward you for your honesty and effort." George raised his hand, shaking his head. "That's not necessary, young man. I didn't do this for a reward." But Michael insisted, pulling out a thick stack of bills. "Please take this. It's the least I can do." George firmly declined. "I appreciate the gesture, but my satisfaction comes from knowing the wallet is back where it belongs." Michael was moved by George's humility, but wasn't ready to let the matter rest. After George left, Michael began to think about how he could help this kind-hearted man in a meaningful way. He decided to visit George's neighborhood the next day to learn more about him. Michael discovered that George was well known in the community for his kindness and generosity, despite his modest means. Neighbors spoke of how he tutored children for free, helped with small repairs, and always had a kind word for everyone. Inspired by this, Michael came up with a plan. A week later, Michael showed up at George's door. "I've been thinking about you ever since you returned my wallet," he said. "You've given so much to your community. Now, it's time for us to give back to you." George was confused but intrigued. Michael explained that he had rallied the neighborhood and his own connections to organize a fundraiser for George. The goal was to provide George with a more comfortable life and ensure his contributions didn't go unnoticed. Over the next month, the community came together in an extraordinary way. Donations poured in, ranging from money to groceries to offers of home repairs. Michael even used his professional connections to secure a pension boost for George. The local news caught wind of the story, and soon George's act of kindness was celebrated far and wide. By the end of it all, George found himself in a completely transformed situation. His once crumbling home was repaired and furnished, his financial struggles eased, and his heart filled with gratitude for the love and support he had received. But what moved him the most was seeing the unity and kindness his story had inspired in others. George looked at Michael one evening and said, "I never imagined that returning a wallet could lead to all this. It's a reminder that the smallest actions can have the biggest impacts." Michael smiled. "You taught us all a lesson, George. Kindness always finds its way back." And so, George's life entered a new chapter, one marked by comfort, gratitude, and the knowledge that his values had not only shaped his own life, but also touched countless others. His story became a beacon of hope, proving that even the simplest acts of honesty and compassion can ripple outward, creating waves of change.